known them since before they started, really. Jennifer came out here to start the quartet with Cicely and Tom. A dear friend of hers, a dear friend of ours, got in touch with us and said, Jennifer's coming out to California to start a string quartet. Please get in touch with her. And we met them just as they were starting, and then I've known them ever since.
When you say their name, everyone in the classical music world really has a sense of who they are and what their sound is and what they've contributed to the contemporary history of string quartet playing.
The unique qualities of the Cypress String Quartet are that they are basically a family and friends and collaborators. They have history and they breathe as one, and there's a joy to their playing.
Paul Wakabayashi. I was the founding member of the Cypress Quartet. So it was the first time really playing and hanging out. And the boat was moving in the middle of the bay, so they took us out in a little launch, pull up parallel to the boat while it's still moving, and they opened this little door almost at the water line, and you have to step off that, and you're kind of like, whoa, this is, But it was really kind of exciting. It's like, wow, it's kind of like the movies. This is, kind of cool, That was actually our first concert. But I just remember that excitement. I was just thinking, okay, this is it. Where, all those early concerts were like that. It was that sort of experiment and bringing the experiment out into the open and then going back. It was difficult, but I'll just never forget those times and how much I think I still grow from them thinking back on it.
20 years is spectacular for a group that has been independent of any institution. So many groups can simply ride on the fact that each member is teaching and is doing other things. So 20 years being independent and presenting themselves is fantastic.
Of the 20 years the Cypress String Quartet has been playing together, Ethan Filner has been the violist for the last 15, following Paul Wakabayashi and Anne Gregg, who actually recommended Ethan to the Cypress.
When I first met Tom, he convinced me to get involved with the quartet. I was struck, and still am, with the quartet's energy and persistence. They are tenacious, they are enthusiastic, and they're still the young version of themselves when I met them in 1999. We put a lot of energy into finding the right way to present the music to our community. We started out with small salons and photo studios and in coffee bars and wine bars. Ultimately, we created the Salon series, which is a huge success in the Bay Area. I think they did an amazing job, and they did it their way.
Many of us know Cypress Quartet from their fantastic performances on the stage, but one of my favorite opportunities is to see them behind the scenes, to see them rehearsing, to see them recording, and the diligence that they do for every part of the process.
They've shown the way for a lot of younger groups to present themselves and find what it is that is not the traditional map for a string quartet.
I think there is going to be two aspects to the quartet's legacy. First of all, the recordings that they have made are wonderful. There's a wide body of repertoire that they've recorded. But maybe even more importantly than that are the pieces that they commissioned. The Cypress Quartet really believed that the repertoire deserved to be refreshed and built upon, and they made it happen.
The Call and Response project that the Cypress String Quartet sponsors is one of the most exciting projects I've ever been involved with as a composer. To be asked to write music that fits into the performance tradition of Beethoven and Mozart, and to be asked to continue that tradition is an honor. It's a little bit scary, but it's also changed the way that I think about what I do in an incredible way. I
am thrilled to have been commissioned actually 3 times by the Cypress String Quartet. Their first Call and Response, a commission from the Lead Center, co-commission with the Cypress String Quartet in the early 2000s, and then this last call and response concert, and it's a great honor to be really affiliated with the history of the quartet.
Dan, what's different about the Cypress String Quartet Call and Response Commission from the usual commissions you receive?
Well, actually, making explicit the idea of call and response is freeing, or it's liberating for a composer, even though it seems like it might not be. I think that all composers want to see themselves in a tradition.
There tends to be a strange division in the classical music world, at least in the US, where there are new music groups and there are repertory groups. And the Cypress has integrated those beautifully. And even the Call and Response series is all about the way that music can span generations and the way that composers are influenced by other music and other composers. Without the prospect of playing a new piece, I don't think that musicians would ever have anything more to say about old music.
When the San Francisco-based Cypress String Quartet formed 10 years ago, part of the reason was to help revitalize chamber music. And part of that involves exposing younger generations.
Well, the quartet was very much focused on educating audiences of all ages.
Please give a warm welcome to the Cypress String Quartet.
So raise your hand if that was the first Bartok that you've heard, the first music by Bartok. So a bunch of you are hearing it for the first time. One of the things we'll play for you next is a movement by Beethoven. So we're going to play a portion of the slow movement of this quartet, and I want you to think about this inspiration that Beethoven had looking out at the stars, and think for yourself, do you think this sounds like music of the spheres or music of the universe or something completely different? So here's some music by Beethoven.
I don't know of any other classical music organization that has really figured out a way to reach students in such a compelling way. The Cypress Quartet just seems to have a huge amount of creative capital. The four of them together have been able to create something that students really relate to, more so than any other classical music organization I know of. And that, to me, is a remarkable legacy in this day and age. I think one of the things that the quartet does is they demonstrate what might be possible if you love it. And I think that it's so much more tangible when a group of musicians actually comes into our space and they don't just play music for us, they've played music with us many times, they've coached us many times, they hang with us.
The importance of the arts, both the performing arts and the visual arts, in the school is enormous, and it's sad that it's always the first thing that's cut. So I think the contribution they make in this regard is an enormously valuable one.
I produced one of the quartet's first video recordings in front of a live audience at Skywalker Sound in 1999. Then in April this year, 16 and a half years later, I attended their last live recording at Skywalker Sound. For me, it's a lovely bookend to a dedicated career and an honor to be a part of such an organization from the very beginnings, where no one really knew what they were getting themselves into, to 16 and a half years later, watching them really pull it together and record such an amazing journey, basically.
So after watching the quartet record all 16 Beethoven quartets over the course of about 8 years, it was really exciting to travel with them to Vienna, Budapest, and Prague to play this entire cycle in cities where Beethoven had performed and lived and composed. One of my favorite memories was hearing the Cypress play Opus 131, a work that was so groundbreaking, in the same hall that Beethoven first conducted his Eroica Symphony in Vienna.
These are world-class musicians living in our backyard, and they've recorded these masterpieces that are so inspiring, and they touch so many different people. We've had the pleasure to hear them live. I've heard them live in many different places all over the world, and it's also been a pleasure, such a great pleasure to be a part of it all.
I've gotten to be closer and closer friends with all of them and seen their careers develop not only as a unit but also as individual musicians, and the individual sound of each player really affects how I conceive the piece.
These musicians are part of my palette. Even when I'm writing for an orchestra, I think that the first violin, the second violin, the viola, and the cello are the musicians in the Cypress String Quartet.
The saying, the grass is greener where you water it, they've always watered their quartet, which have enabled them as individuals and as a quartet to grow to the maximum extent. Because of the quartet's existence for 20 years and the magnificence of what they've created, they're going to share something that very few people have that experience to share.
They're the greatest people, and I love them all. And Tom makes great coffee, and Ethan has chickens, which I think is really cool, in his backyard. Jennifer is a lot of fun. Cecily is the most amazing recording engineer, among other things, and great friend and dog lover.
I can only wish wonderful things for each of them, and I hope that they will continue to contribute to the enjoyment of this wonderful art for themselves and for the public.
Every meeting, every program, every concert, they feel everything so intensely, and they bring such a sense of idealism and honor and hard work and commitment, and everything that's beautiful about the arts and humanity is wrapped up in how they conduct themselves.
It's really an honor to have worked with them throughout their whole career, and I hope to continue to do so in wherever their individual paths take them in the future.
Jennifer, Ethan, Cecily, Tom, man, it's been a great ride. I have so much gratitude for what you've given us. You've really made a difference. Thank you.